what is possible with AI. For some of you, you're like, I know this, I'm an expert. For others, you're like, I've been hearing it, so I don't know how I can get up to speed. So that's our job here. We're going to give you guys just a little insiders, peek, just a little taste of what is possible with AI. So Mr. Chooks will join us shortly. He's going to give you guys, this ultimately is a technical session, so he's going to give you guys the sort of, introspective, what's the word I'm looking for? A deeper look on the tech between inside of large language models, so you guys to understand what that is. And then I'll come after him, just do a general overview so you guys, it feels more applicable to you. And then we'll now do an exercise. So for those of you who weren't here early, we told you to come early, but you didn't come early, it's okay. For those of you who aren't here early, once we start on the exercises, feel free to pick a partner. There are like 6 laptops, I believe, up here. Pick a partner, gather around just to get a feel of what is going on. For some things, you can actually do it on your phone as well. For some of the other exercises, you might not be able to do it on your phone, so we'll just see when we get there. Okay, so we'll be starting shortly. Oh, Mr. Chooks, are you ready? Okay, so introducing Mr. Chooks. I should clap for him now.
I don't know one clap for me again. Good morning. So, just like Chloe said, I know some of us are experts, some of us are beginners. So since this is a general class, we're going to take it from beginner to an expert level, kind of in quotes, please. So we're starting with AI for beginners, a PP side large language models. As technical people, we always want to know what is actually the secret or the inner workings of this thing called AI. So when you understand how it works, you can appreciate the beauty and what you can use with it. Next slide, please. So I'll just quickly run through that. So now, AI, we talk about machine learning, deep learning, natural language processing, large language models, and then prompt engineering. Now, in everything here, prompt engineering is the most important. Why is it? Because it's basically how you interact with AI to get the best out of it. In simple terms, normally, when we are doing our computer science, say garbage in, garbage out. Now, if you give the large AI a simple instruction, to give you a simple output. Now, if you want the best out of it, you need to learn how to instruct it to give you the best, the detailed output, and that is prompt engineering, and that's what we're going to learn here. So you're going to amaze you what these AIs can do. Most times you don't even understand what they can do, but when we get to the practical, you will appreciate the beauty behind it. Next, please. Next slide. So basically, what we call large language models. Large language models. Large means that there are a lot of data, training data involved in this. Most times the scout tree, we're surprised that even your tweets or your Facebook page was among the data used in training the AI. Okay? Because they harvest a large quantity of data from the web, from physical books, from everything you can think of. And you talk about language. Now basic computer science, when we are doing computer science, we talk about machine language, ones and zeros. So now we have upgraded. Now AI just say, look, give me your natural language. Speak to me in your native language. Would that be English, Igbo, whatever? I take it, Yoruba, Hausa. I will take it and interpret for you. You can speak to it and it will just turn into a code. Whatever you want the AI to do, just send it as a text or language, your natural language, and we'll do it for you. And of course, you talk about modeling, you talk about machine learning, artificial intelligence systems, trained to perform certain tasks. So that's what the model is. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now, in the language, talk about words. So in AI takes it as tokens. They call them tokens. So the instruction you give to him, he looks at it as a token. Okay, and takes it. And a token approximately is a 0.75 words. That's what it uses. Okay, next slide. So we all know that GPT is the most popular LLM we can think of. So most times we just have to revert to that because that is what we actually are very used to. So the GPT, just to give an insight, is an LLM with 165 billion parameters across 96 layers, trained in 300 billion tokens. We're going to see, when we get a deep dive, we're going to explain what that means and how it actually works. Okay? And of course, GPT-4 is the junior brother. So now they didn't release actual parameters, but they're estimating that it took over 1 trillion parameters. So you can understand that it takes a lot of data to train it to do what it actually does. Okay, next slide. So now, let me just show you how this AI was built. It was built or it was designed in accordance with how the human brain works. Now we know the human brain, we talk about neurons connecting together. So when you see something, it registers into your memory. That memory you're talking about is actually a neuron that actually registers in it. So after, down the line, in a year's time, you want to remember something. Inside your brain, for you to remember that thing you've seen, it takes a series of processes inside your brain in terms of neurons being activated and connecting with each other until a light bulb comes in, meaning that neuron that's in your subconsciousness that was stored has been activated. That now comes straight to you, to your fore. So next slide. So basically, that's how it's designed. So in your normal brain, you look at something, you see something, I say, okay, I saw something like a balloon. You now start to try to remember of what it was. So these are neurons. The red neurons are the activated neurons. The blue ones are the non-activated ones. So as you connect, this is your neuron that has that subconscious of the balloon you saw. So before you can remember this, there has to be a full connection from the front down to the back before you can activate. If there's no activation, you cannot remember it. That is why when they tell you to read something, you have to read something 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So the more you read, the more the neurons are attached to that which you are looking at, and then the harder it will be for you to forget it. Next slide. Okay, let me just, next slide. Next slide. Okay, so this is basically a picture of how your brain works, a brain activity. So these are your neurons trying to connect together, okay? So if they don't connect together, you can't remember things. Next slide. So this is how the AI was designed. It was designed in form of neurons. So you have your layer 1, layer 2. So when I told you that GP33 has 96 layers, so basically it has layer 1 up to 96 layers. They have your input layer and outside layer. Now there are all these interconnections you see, just like your brain. They are all intertwined and interconnected together. Okay, every single neuron is interconnected to each other. So when you send it something, we're going to be talking about the parameters first. Next slide. Now you look at every line is weighted. There's a reason for all these particular lines. So a ChatGPT is designed that if a token, for instance, you have something an input layer of 100, there's a weight of 0.5 for those particular lines, and then each neuron has a bias on it, either negative or positive. And for each layer, there's a threshold. So once the neuron attains high threshold, it activates. So if you look at this now, you have 100. 100 multiplied by 0.5 will give you what? 50. Plus the bias of 10 gives you 60. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, yeah. So now this layer is 50. This guy is now 60. What does it do? It means that it's connecting. So it triggers, it becomes a red light bulb. Okay? Meaning that it's activated. So the next layer, for instance, now it has a -7 of bias. The weight is 0.7. Okay? If you multiply it, you have that eventually your layer is going to be 35. Next slide. And then the threshold is 70. It means that this neuron will not be triggered. Okay? So it is designed on the next slide. Okay, so now, how does this work? They call it an auto-regenerative input, in the sense that it's serial-based. So you put in your ChatGPT front-end, you now type in Mary Hade. It's a predictive generative transformer. So when you have Mary Hade, it should start synthesizing and running through all the whole algorithms it has. All these neurons are all part of algorithms, parameters. And then now put something for you. Leto. Now, one thing is that Leto is not the one that puts. It puts like at least 5 different variables. It can bring out Leto, it can bring out small, it can bring out very tiny. But since Leto has a high probability, it comes in first. So it tells you that, okay, Leto is actually a high probability of the next preemptive generative that is going to come out. Next slide. Now, it runs it back again into Leto, and then it starts the same process again, and it's outputting what? It can be 5 variables, a lamp, a goat, a sheep, whatever. The lamp has a higher probability, so it picks it out. So this is basically how your ChatGPT or LLM works. So it predicts and runs out things consistently, and as you put in it until it has generated everything you need. So basically, entirely, just how it works into order. Next slide. Okay, now we have ChatGPT, we have Llama, we have DeepSeek. Llama is an open source from Meta. Just to compare with ChatGPT. Why ChatGPT has 165 parameters, Llama has what? 7 billion parameters, 32 layers, and then 2 trillion tokens. So the same thing, all these. So when you see all the language models, they are trained. There is what we call scaling law, meaning that the higher your parameters, and the more your layers, and the more your tokens, the smarter your LLM gets. That is why they take time to make sure that they invest as much token as possible to train it. Next slide. Okay, next slide. So now, in your LLM, there are basically 2 ways it's trained. We call it the pre-training and the fine-tuning. Next slide. So when you are doing the pre-training, this is what happens. You have your CPUs. So for instance, when Elon Musk was building Grok 3, he had maybe something that's large at this room, and he went to NVIDIA and bought GPU cards. It can be actually filled up this whole hall completely of GPU cards. Okay, and they started harvesting data from all around the internet and started training it. What are they trying to achieve? They are trying to, all the whole data they can get, you are trying to what? Get a pattern. A pattern. So this GPU runs through all the harvesting, tries to create patterns in millions or billions of parameters. harvesting through this, running through these layers. Next slide. So at the end of the day, when you have those patterns, it still doesn't make sense because even when you have this base model, you ask it some questions, it still not reply you. So what happens? The fine-tuning now means that people like you and I are now employed to start what? Creating ideal questions and answers to fine-tune those patterns they had in order to make sure that the questions I ask him actually get the answer back. And that's how it works. So they spend time, millions of dollars, trying to build up any kind of question in the world and telling the ChatGPT or the LLM how to answer those questions, the ideal question and answers. Now, so the computer is so intelligent that when you have all those patterns, you can now start building up and now deriving. So any kind of question you ask it, it can actually go inside the model and generate an answer together with how you've been trained. That's why some cell elements are specialized. Okay, some are general, but those that cost a lot of money. Some are quite specialized in how they work. Next slide. Okay, so at this stage, just these are the different models. So I'm going to hand over to Chloe now to take us into the actual modeling of this. But this for now, you can see what you have. You have the ChatGPT, OpenAI, Gemini, Cloud, Anthropic. These are the these are actually the most, what I call it, the popular LLMs, okay, that we have playing around. So Chloe, come over and then just take over and cover this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chooks. Okay, so we're going to just bring that home, right? Like I said, this was the deep dive to really understand how the tech works, and then we're going to bring it home. All righty, next slide, please. And then let's do one more. Next slide. Okay, and you can click twice. So again, all of that was to show you simply that artificial intelligence is how we get computers to think like humans. That's it. That's a simple way you can think about this technology. And like Mr. Chooks pointed out, right, a lot of what makes humans humans is how we think, right? How we're able to process language, interact with other people, process information, right? That's part of what makes humans humans. And so all artificial intelligence is doing is kind of mimicking, if you could call it that, right, some of that same processes that we take on as humans. So analyzing data, recognizing patterns, right? So it's this concurrent process of taking in data, interpreting it, and then outputting something. Next slide. Click through a couple times. So I'll just give you an overview of all the different technologies that is. Mr. Chooks really talked about, kind of natural language processing. I'll give you a deep dive here, or a high-level overview. So with something like machine learning, right, this is how AI takes that data and uses it to make predictions. So in the energy context, it could be something like failure detection. If you stay long enough for our session, we'll do an example of that. But in the kind of everyday life, it could be like Netflix recommending movies, right? You ever go onto Netflix or YouTube even, and you see a show or a channel pops up, and you're like, how did the algorithm know that I would like this? It's based off of your previous historical watch data, right? So it takes that information and it can make a prediction that, you know what, Chloe might actually enjoy this movie or this show. Let's recommend it to her. And then we have computer vision, right? So I used to work at Tesla, actually. So you can think of self-driving cars. How do self-driving cars actually make it out onto the road, and ideally with no, safety, no incidents or errors or anything like that? Well, there are some errors, but we'll pretend like there aren't. So what they do is they take images, right? They view the real world, kind of like what we do as humans. How do I look at this person? I know this is a man, this is a laptop, because I'm a human being, and I've seen this so many times that I know any sort of device that looks like this is more than likely a laptop. So that's essentially what the computer vision does, and that's kind of another example of artificial intelligence. Okay, another example here is natural language processing, right? You can think about your Siri, your Alexa, when you speak to the computer, really, and ask it, what is the weather today, or what time is it, and it responds back to you in English or whatever language that you speak to it, right? This is just the same thing as me speaking to somebody, hello, what is your name? And him asking me back, my name is blah, 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 and what is yours? And then the final thing, which I think a lot of people are starting to get really excited about, is generative AI. So AI as technology has existed for several years, 50, 60 years, however long you can think about it, right? It's not really a new thing. But generative AI in the past couple of years is what has felt very accessible to people, right? So everybody's really excited about this. And in my opinion, it's probably the most exciting aspect of this technology. So this is where your ChatGPT, the large language models come in, and even other things. So in this case, it's new content that is being created. Everything else, it was like data or content that's already been created, and then the AI is processing it and making some output. This is entirely new data that it's outputting. So you can think of that data in the form of text, in the form of images, and then even in the form of video. So again, we'll show you an example of that. So these are just some examples of of generative AI models. And there's so much more technologies under this. Next slide. So AI is for every day, right? Like I said, our main goal here is to demystify this idea, right? I'm a tech person with my training. Some of you may or may not be, but we want you to see how applicable and easily accessible these technologies are to you. So I'll talk through this very quickly. You can think of kind of two main buckets here, your day-to-day productivity. So this is your personal life, your work life, whatever. You can think of all these different use cases that you might use. I know we have some students here, right? So if you're creating documents, if you're in marketing and you have to do some branding work, right? Gone are the days where you spend hours and hours and hours trying to come up with an idea or figure this out. There are these technologies and these tools that you can use with the help of AI to make life easier, to make life more efficient, right? So ChatGPT, Gemini, DeepSeek, these are chat bots. Right, you give it input of text, it gives you output of text. There are also some other ones like Plus AI, which I like to use and actually use to help put this deck together, right? You give it some inputs of text and it can help you map out different slides and different ideas that you may have. And then on the business side, right, there's so many other tools. If there are any executives in the house, you can think about reports generations, right? You have, everybody has sent you information and their reports and their summaries for the year. You can actually just use an AI tool in order to summarize all of that and give it some cleaner output for you. So these are just some use cases and some tools that you can use that, can help you utilize AI every day. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, let's click through a couple times. So why does this matter for energy? I know some of you are like, okay, AI, what next, right? This is also relevant for energy. Why? Because artificial intelligence, like any new technology in the world, right? You can think about how the introduction of the telephone revolutionized the way we communicate with people. The introduction of airplanes revolutionized the way we travel, right? And so AI is revolutionizing industries. It's revolutionizing the efficiency, right? And other ways that we can bring our industries forward. So we've kind of categorized it in these three buckets, which is efficiency, innovation, and sustainability. But if you can imagine, there are probably so many other use cases that can apply to you, depending on what little slice of the pie in the energy industry that you belong to. We're going to talk a little bit at some point about predictive maintenance. But again, always keep that idea of like all AI is how do I think like a human, but like faster or more efficiently. So either recognizing data, recognizing patterns, right, and then using that to learn and give a better output as we go along. Okay, next slide. All right, so this is a technical session. We've talked at you enough. We're now going to make it practical, right? AI isn't just hype, it's practical. So like I said, for the ones who got here early, and we have another session later if you wanted to come back and actually be at one of the laptops. But we're going to do a few exercises today just to make it practical. The first exercise that we're going to do is actually applicable to you. So if you have your phones, you can pull out your phone and go to either gemini.google.com if you have a Google account, or you can go to ChatGPT, which is actually free to get started. Next slide. Okay, so this is our context, right? Like I said, we're making it real. So the context is you, so everybody put your kind of thinking and imaginary caps on. And this actually might be true for some of you. You're working on next year's strategy for your company, and you need to generate insights on industry trends. So we're going to use ChatGPT to just get a feel of what this is. And like Mr. Chooks talked about earlier, prompt engineering, that might sound kind of, hand-wavy, but all that is how you craft these instructions, right? These inputs that you give to these artificial intelligence tools in order to get an output that is, better serves you, right? So people sometimes, especially if you're not used to these things and you just open up ChatGPT, okay, they said you can use it to do this, tell me this, tell me that. You can actually refine, you can actually give it more information, and the more information, the more complex instructions that you give it, the more insightful insights that it will give you. Okay, next slide. So let's all go to chat.openai. If you're at a laptop, you can turn on the laptops now. Oh no, I hope this one, okay, there we go. So it should be open. Alrighty. Or if you're a Google person, you can use gemini.google.com. Or if you're interested in what's happening on the other side of the world, you can also go to chat.deepseek.com. Okay, we're going to start off with this prompt. Like again, we're starting off with this, and then we'll refine it as we go along. What are the top 3 trends? So if you're on your phone, you can type this out. What are the top 3 trends shaping the energy industry in Nigeria next year, and how should companies prepare for them? What are the top 3 trends shaping the energy industry in Nigeria next year, and how should companies prepare for them? So this is also a test on how fast of a typist that you are. What are the top 3 trends shaping the energy industry in Nigeria next year, and how should companies prepare for them? So has anybody gotten it in yet? I see someone put their hands away, so that means that they're waiting for the AI to cook. What are the top 3 trends shaping the energy industry in Nigeria next year or this year? It doesn't really matter. And how should companies prepare for them? Okay, next slide. So just a general thought from us, right? These are tools, and these chatbots in particular are really great for like strategic thinking when you're on the job and you're like, I just need to like process some things. You know, it's a good support for you, particularly if you're an executive as well. But also, you know, if you're a professional in your daily job. Okay, next slide. And how should we prepare for this? So press enter. Let's send this in and see what is outputted. So it's quite an interesting output, right, for those of us who it's coming up for. Yeah, you got yours. Do you want to share?
As Nigeria's energy sector evolves, several key trends are expected to shape the industry.
So generally, it's just like a long set of insights, right?
Yeah.
Different things. Yeah, cool. If yours not, why not partner up with someone?
We've not gone into the same side, but
Yeah.
it's giving different.
But that's the whole idea. Well, we'll refine it and see what else comes. Cool, so that's just one initial prompt, right? So we're already kind of on this next slide here. Pick another one of these follow-ups, I'll read them out to you. Or if you have even any that come to mind, and see what happens. I really like this one, you know, in the second one here, which is like, we have international partners that we'd like to share this with. Can you translate this into Mandarin? Think about what this would have been a couple of years ago, right? You would have said, do I know anybody in Lagos that speaks Chinese, right? You know, or you start putting it to Google Translate, and if you've used Google Translate, if you speak another language, you know Google Translate isn't really great sometimes with like particularly African languages, hello, you know? So AI can do that for you. I will caution that obviously you still want to confirm that these things are accurate, right? It's still a growing technology. But that's really cool. Like something that would have taken you ages to do in the past now takes you seconds. I like this one in particular, right? I'd like to present this at Saipec this year. Can you format this as a Q&A session? Right? These are some of the things that you can actually add. Now think about, imagine if we had this at the very beginning with that initial prompt. Right? I had that question, what are the top 3 trends? And then I said, also translate this into Mandarin, also turn it into a PowerPoint slide for me, and then also, you know, format it as a Q&A session. All of that would be outputted, you know, to your particular specifications. Cool, so why not put in, for those of us on our laptops, why not pick one of these follow-ups? Maybe the first one is a short one to type. Can you summarize and export this as a PowerPoint slide? And believe it or not, the AI literally will export it as a slide. Can you summarize and export this as a PowerPoint slide? I like this one as well. We are an energy services company. If you were at our fireside chats earlier, Madam Proskovia was here talking a little bit about renewables in Uganda, right? We are an energy services company, and we are considering entering the Nigerian renewable energy market, right? Still a growing market. Can you generate a competitive landscape analysis and market entry strategy for us? You can even prompt the AI on what kind of company you are. Maybe we're a small energy services company, or an energy services company that only operates in the western part of Nigeria. You can give it all of that information and see, you know, what specific insights are relevant to you. Okay, so it's cooking here for it's cooking up here for some of our folks up here. May have been an error. Okay, great. I'll come back to you. Next slide. So a little thought from us, right? Play around with this, give it more information, kind of what I said earlier. The more you give it, the more you get out. That's really, it's kind of like a, you know, in and out. The more you give it, the more you get out. Next slide. Okay, so now we're going to do something really cool, which is a video output, right? We talked about text. We said there is video. We said there's images, and then we're also going to talk about video. This one's a bit of a long prompt, so for our folks up here, it might, yeah. So if you actually click that, you'll see that it's a PowerPoint slide. It's an actual legit PowerPoint, so you can download it. And the artificial intelligence is able to just output that for you. Okay, so Sora is actually not free, so if you don't have Sora already on your computer, this might be a bit tricky. But we'll use this one here as an example. So let's say I had put in this prompt, you know, again, the more information, notice how this is probably the longest prompt that we've had since our very first question, right? The prompt is, I'm putting together a presentation on trends shaping the energy industry in Nigeria. So let's say I'm a marketing professional or I'm a sales engineer at the company, and I'm looking for images or videos, and I can't quite find something that applies to the deck that I'm putting together. So can you create a video that visually illustrates these key developments? And I add some more information. The video should include a cutting-edge natural gas processing plant showing pipelines efficiently transporting gas from the AKK pipeline, highlighting Nigeria's gas infrastructure boom. Like, that is a very detailed, this is almost like, if anyone has worked in kind of the marketing world, this is almost like what you would give as a brief, right? Like a consulting firm or a marketing firm to put together for you. These are the things that I'm looking for. So as you can see, maybe in our afternoon session, I'll have to put this up front. But this is the exact prompt that was put in. And that was the output of video. So if I know people are far out. That's a full video, just off of this text input that the artificial intelligence was able to output. So for those of us up here, yeah, so just let that load and I'll put it in. That's it. These are just, again, this is like the lowest level way that you can get started with artificial intelligence. And again, I want you guys to leave here thinking about all the different possible use cases that might apply to you, whatever type of professional you are, whatever type of stage in life that you are, whether you're a student, you're an executive, whatever. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Oh, sorry, actually go back one. Yeah, okay. So again, yeah, like I said, we're only just getting started, right? Think about how this applies to you. Think about all the different things that, could be possible in the years to come. There's actually also sound output that's becoming more and more popular as well. You give it a text input or you give it a voice input, right? So I say, hi, can you do so and so for me? And it gives you that output. I know one of my friends uses AI a lot for his podcast. He's like, I don't have any guests, so let me use, my artificial intelligence as a guest for my podcast while it continues to grow, right? So those are just some examples. Okay, next slide. So just some takeaways for this initial exercise. It's a strategic tool. That's all it is. It's to help you, right? It's like an assistant. It's like a support. It's technology that can ideally only help your life be better. So use it to enhance decision making and stay competitive. Like I said, this is revolutionizing industries around the world, particularly the energy industry. So we don't want Nigeria to be left behind. Different tools work for different use cases. AI adoption is much easier than you think, right? For some of you, like Mr. Chuk said earlier, some of you are like, okay, I've already used AI before. For some of you, like, I actually never knew this existed. This happened in our session yesterday. There were a few people that left and they were really, really excited because they're like, I actually did not know this existed, right? So talk to somebody about AI, start using it in your daily life so you don't get left behind, as it were, right? Boost your productivity and streamline operations to drive real business impact. So this first exercise that we did, and I'll have you guys clap for me in a second, but this first exercise that we did was just kind of our intro exercise. The next one, if you want to stick around, is more of a deep dive into how this is applicable, particularly in the energy industry, and we'll use the use case of predictive maintenance. So next slide. Okay. Well, let's clap before we go into the second one. Okay. So for those of us sticking around, okay, there we go. We have Sora open. We're going to take yes, I'm like sweating down, Anta, it's the lights. We're going to take like a 2-minute break, and then we'll get into our second exercise. Okay, so this is Sora. Why don't you go down here? And since we don't have that other prompt, put in any prompt that you want. Mr. Trix earlier put in the ascension of Jesus Christ. So put in, what would you like to see as a video output? Put that in.
We have to log in.
It should be logged in already. Click login and I'll come and log in for you. Did this die on you? Okay. So why don't you try a prompt on your own? Anything that you'd like to see. So we were really trying to keep it like marketing focused or energy focused, but Mr. Chooks earlier, Mr. Prompt, I start calling you that. Mr. Chooks earlier said that he wanted to visualize the ascension of Jesus Christ, and he put it in And it actually gave him that output, right, in Sora. Do you have Sora open here? So why don't we, while Sora is loading, why don't we have collab? Yeah. So a few more minutes and then we'll get on to our second exercise. Did you log in? One thing to point out as well with artificial intelligence, it's growing energy demand as well, right? You can think about how much it takes to power these systems and think about like how many billions of people around the world are using these systems. So that could also be relevant for you, maybe not directly with the technology, but as being the people that help to power this technology. Right now, everybody, you see, what's his name, Sam Altman is in France right now, looking for who is going to support the energy that will power this technology. Okay, I do want us to get started on the second exercise, so let's just open this one. Yeah. What are your thoughts? I want you to say that to the crowd. So she just used Sora. What are your thoughts?
Fantastic.
There you go. Okay. So let's open up. So I might have you share with her for this next exercise.
Okay, I think it's the first one.
Can we get collab? Okay, so let's go into our second exercise. Were you able to put in your prompt? Yes. Let's go into our second exercise. So this is the context for this exercise. Like I said, put on your imaginary caps. This could be applicable to you, may not be applicable to you, but just let's play pretend for a bit. So your company is experiencing unexpected equipment failures in offshore drilling operations. Predictive maintenance using artificial intelligence can help predict failures early and allow you to take action to prevent costly downtime. So if you can think about it, usually when things fail, right, it's usually a costly exercise. Things shut down, you have to spend all this time turning things around, you have to make up for the lost time, before it now gets back up and going, right? Now imagine if we could predict that, right? Use not magic per se, but technology to predict these things happening ahead of time. And so think back to all that you've learned so far from Mr. Chuk's session, from my initial intro. What does AI do? It takes information, it takes data, right? Historical data. It learns it. It's able to recognize patterns. Okay, I noticed that when this happens, this might happen. I noticed that when somebody says Mary had a little, in the history of English-speaking world, right, it's more than likely that lamb is going to come next. And so you can think about how that simplified idea can apply in more complex situations and complex systems, right, particularly in the energy world. So we're going to actually run like a predictive AI model. I call it AI because it's more, we're going to use like heuristics. We're not actually going to train our own model because we don't have time, right? But in the real world, we'll take in a whole bunch of data, put it through an artificial intelligence model, and then it will be able to learn and be trained from that. But in this case, we'll just use kind of like a pre-prepped one. So let's go to the next slide. Yeah, and let's click through a couple times. Okay, let's keep it there. So for those of us on our laptops, you should have this same script pulled up. And if you don't, feel free to share. Yeah, this one. It's okay, don't be intimidated. If you're not like a coder or a tech person, don't be intimidated. We're going to break it down for you a little bit. Yeah, well, I'll give you the tips. For example, chat.gpt.com is a free tool. Yeah, so you can just open that. Yeah, Sora is also, just go to Sora.com. It's just not free. That's the only difference. So you can actually, you can go to Sora.com. It's just not free. It's like $20 a month or something. Okay, so I think our middle crew is still getting started. But for everybody else in the audience, just kind of visualize what it is that we're going on. So we have this script that we put together, right? This code that we put together. And I'll read, break it down for you. So this script, this code basically simulates a scenario where your team has gotten a whole bunch of data from sensors on the rig, and then we're using normal data that we collect, right? If you're an engineer and you worked out in the field, this is not new, right? We measure temperature, we measure pressure, we measure all sorts of things. And the main reasoning behind measuring that is to keep track of our equipment. We want to make sure like temperatures are the right place, pressures are in the right place, and all that. So again, let's say that we've had think about with the historical data, let's say this rig operations have been going on for like 5 years. So we have 5 years worth of data, including failures, right? 5 years worth of data, including failures that we've collected, and we're going to upload into our model. So let's go to the next slide. I don't want to leave the middle crew behind. Okay, we'll keep it going, and then for our middle crew, I might have you guys join our 2 ones on the end. Okay, so again, just to explain a little bit what's going on. This model, right, like I said, we have 5 years worth of data that we're putting into the model. This model will take that information. Notice, in year 2, that one time when the temperature spiked like that then led to downtime, like a week later. Or that one time when the pressures were off balance, that actually led to a failure down the line, right? So again, it's starting to recognize those patterns. Oh, that also happened in year 3. Oh, that same situation happened in year 4. Oh, that same situation happened in year 1, right? It's creating all these patterns and like noticing where, things might be a particular, failure scenario, failure situation. So again, what we're doing here is just simulate how that AI would work for you. You put all that data in. In this case, we just set some manual baselines with the code. All that means is we said, okay, let's pretend that when the temperature hits so-and-so Fahrenheit, I like sometimes thinking in the American code, right? Fahrenheit, we know that equals a failure. Or let's say just pretend that so-and-so pressure, PSI equals a failure. So again, in the real world, a true machine learning model would just know that. We don't have to tell it that this is the baseline. It would have picked up, okay, year 2, year 3, year 4, right? You're seeing those patterns throughout the data. And then that will now help you determine that, hey, FYI, a failure might happen in a little bit, so be aware. Okay, so for those of us, so why don't we do this? Why don't we move this laptop there, and then you guys can share this one, yeah. All righty, so we have our 3 groups here. Why don't we hit run? So next slide. Click through a couple times, yeah, okay. So we're going to click run, find that little play button, just hit play, hit run. Yeah. So just hit run. Yeah, click it. Yeah, just say run anyway. So our code is chugging now. It's getting all that information in. I'll scroll through that really quickly and let me know what it outputs. I put the code together, so I do know what it outputs. But you observe the output and see, okay, this one's up. So I didn't hit run. That's our little play button up here. This tool is called Google Colab. So you can go to collab.research.google and play around with it. And I had this, actually go back one slide. Go back a couple times actually to the last one. And click one more. I had my little thought bubble come up. Okay, yeah, so this, I want you guys to see this. So even if you don't have tech people or coders or developers at your company, right, if you're more of like a traditional energy company, you can actually use AI to help figure this out. You can go in and say, hey, I was at this conference. Like, I'm really being serious. I want you guys to try this prompt when you go home. I was at this conference and they were saying something about AI, and they said something about predictive maintenance, and I'm trying to understand how I would be able to put together a model in order to predict failures on my rig. Give it a prompt like that, and it will give you some information. And then prompt it again. Say, okay, this makes sense, but she talked about this Collab tool. What may she had mentioned? She probably talked about collab.research.go, right? That is how powerful these tools are. They can actually like interpret the English or whatever language. You can even speak to it in Yoruba, speak to it in whatever language you're giving it. It can process that and give you the output that you desire, even if you don't have the technical background for this. So I put together the script. I have a background in engineering, and I used to work in tech, but there was some aspects of the technology that I didn't really know. I used AI. I was like, help me, this is kind of what I'm trying to put together. I'm running a workshop. I want it to be this type of model. And it helped me output the code directly in the output box. Okay, slide. Let's go all the way back to step 2. So what do you notice? Are people here? What do you notice all the way at the end? So we're assuming this MC1, MC2, MC3, this is the same output that they have for folks in our audience, right? So let's see, these are all the different machines on the rig, right? And each machine has its own different sensor and whatever, measuring a whole bunch of things. Measuring temperature, measuring pressure, measuring vibration, right? And at the end, the AI has been able to, from all the data that we fed it, right? We didn't actually feed it data, but let's pretend we did. All the data that we fed it, it will say, okay, hey, MC2 is actually looking okay. It's looking fine. MC4, MC5, watch out. Maybe go and do some maintenance early. Predictive maintenance, that's the whole idea. Go and check out those machines. Go and change a few things because it has a high risk of failing soon based off of previous failure modes, based off of downtime in the past. So think about how much that could save you. I know there's some execs in the audience, there's some professionals in the audience. Maybe if you're a safety person, you can think about how this could be applicable to you. If you could get a heads up on when these things fail, it can save you time, it can save you money. Interesting, right? So think about how if you put this for like March, for like April, you'd be an efficiency expert at your company. And I love the thing that Mr. Chooks is blocking. With AI, you would be able to analyze months of data in seconds, right? Imagine going one by one to every part of the rig to check, is this one working? Ideally, we're not there. I think a lot of our companies have gone past that. There's probably like a central control center. But imagine if you could now kind of plug in artificial intelligence technology to your control center, right? So again, think about some of the other scenarios that this could apply at your company. If you're on the engineering side, if you're on the sales side, if you're on the marketing side, right? I'm a product manager at heart, so I use AI a lot for like strategy, right? How can I build this business? How can I grow this business? Think about all the different ways that it could be helpful for you. Okay, next slide. So just to bring it home again, we'll do a nice little chatbot exercise as well. So you already have Gemini open. Gemini is just another tool, very similar to ChatGPT or DeepSeek or Claude. Let's go to Gemini. And the reason we're using Gemini, you can actually, if you are in Collab, you can just go to, there's a Gemini, so Collab is a Google tool. So you can actually just go to Gemini. It's already in that. If you click Gemini here, yeah. So you can see there's already a chatbot built in. So don't open Gemini as a separate, go to back to the Collab link, and then click Gemini in there, yeah. So this is what we're going to do. I said copy and paste because I thought you may have a copy of the deck on your laptops, but that's okay. It might be it might be quite a lot to type. But essentially what this is showing you is you can take that information that you had already in the same code and same Collab tab that you have and give it more information and say, help me create a maintenance plan. Okay, you've told me that so and so machines are at risk, help me create a maintenance plan, and it can help you put that together. So again, how could you tweak the prompt? We've already done, you guys are now prompt engineering experts, right? So how could we tweak that prompt to make it even more applicable to you? Maybe you're not the maintenance person, maybe you're the safety person. Help me create a safety plan to train our staff on how to look out for this. Help me to create blah, 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 right? Think about all the different things that you could use this for. Okay, next slide, and this might be our final slide, I believe. So it's more than just automation, right? A lot of times when we think about technology, it's just like, okay, it can just help me do so and so, but it's a strategic tool. I keep emphasizing that. That's really probably the easiest way that we can, kind of access artificial intelligence technology for strategic thinking and whatnot. So enhance your decision making, maintain a competitive edge in industry, right? We don't want energy to be left behind. We don't want energy in Nigeria. We don't want energy in sub-Saharan Africa to be left behind. Getting started with AI is easier than you think. My friend here asked earlier, I hope I'll remember how to do this when I get home. Go to chat.openai.com, right? Go to gemini.google.com, go to DeepSeek, and just start by simple prompts, then start with more complex prompts. If you're a business person, you're like, I'm a young student, but I'm interested in starting an energy company. Give me a plan to start an energy company as a 22-year-old student graduating from Unilag and see what it outputs, right? And refine it and see how it can help you with your own planning and strategic thinking. And then finally, I love this. I say this all the time. AI is for every day. Whether at work or in your daily life, it can help simplify tasks, save time, and boost productivity. All righty. So that's the end. Next slide. I think it's our thank you slide. I'll have you guys clap for me again. So my name was or is Chloe. Mr. Chooks gave us our deep dive lecture earlier. Thank you for joining. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. If I may just summarize, the first presentation is actually, if I may summarize, is just the quality of the information you put out will be dependent on the quality of the information you get from the ChatGPT. That's the summary. And I give you one example. I go to a doctor and I said to, let's assume I've had this symptom of malaria for 2 weeks. And I go to a doctor, Dr. A, and say, sorry, I have this symptom of malaria. How long? I say 1 day. He will give me a prescription. Is that right? I go to another doctor, the same doctor, with another information and say, oh, these symptoms has been on for 2 weeks. He will give me a different prescription, more details, you understand, because the quality of the information I give, you understand, prompted him to, give you that type of information. So that's the first takeaway from the first slide. The second one, that maintenance model, is quite interesting. I liken it to a judge. A judge can use it now because if a case between a governor and maybe one party, and the judge is to take a decision, you can upload all the Supreme Court judgment in the area that is, reminiscent to this case. Is that not? So that, the data you put in, you can use that one to, take a decision. I mean, the AI will use it to take a decision on that very particular case, so that we won't have a scenario where a judgment comes and it's a far deviation from the normal historical judgment that, has been passed across. So I want to thank, we are from University of Lagos, majority of us, and we'll be leaving now. But I just want to say thank you to the company for doing this much, and we've been enlightened. Some of us who are teachers, we now know that when you go beyond that and ask for information, how you can put it on slide, then you can put it on slide, then you can even probe deeper and say, okay, I want it this way. So you go on and on refining the quality of information that you've got. So it's a great one, and we are giving it up to you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And yes, that lawyer, judge example is true. Like, there are literally people that are doing that today. I will again caution that AI is still, or generative AI, I should say, still fairly new, right? So always double check. I know there was a lawyer in America, I think, that got in trouble because, it's phantomized a case that didn't actually exist. But you might point out, and just by a quick search, you might find that there are actually specific tools now. There are specific companies, that fit some of these niches and some of these use cases, right? Specific tool for lawyers and judges, and are probably ideally more accurate as well. Thank you. Any more questions? We have room for one or two more. I don't see any more questions. Any questions from the audience? You guys have been an excellent audience. Thank you so much. We are Oida Energy. Thank you for joining. We have another session later today, I believe. So if you want at the laptops, come early, right? Circle around so you can be at the laptops next time.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
And if you didn't have a chance to be at the laptops, we'll have them open for a bit. So if people clear out and you want to come in and play around with some of the tools, you're welcome to.
film, see the come. One can